What's up, folks? Casual Dad here with another deck building guide, and today we're going to go ahead and jump in with the machine man himself, Magos Dominus, stuff. Coming in at 17 points, he's the second cheapest warlord in Servants of the Emperor faction, and the second cheapest warlord in the entire game, which, as I've said before, is a feature by itself. That said, there is another cheaper warlord in the same faction. That would be Commissar, Yarick. Yeah, Commissar Yarick, Old Baali, the old man himself. And I will say that conventional wisdom is that Magos is bad. I'll go ahead and jump right in there. We'll go ahead and talk about his ability, look at some deck builds, just real quick run through and play a couple games with him just so you can see him in action. So, you can see right here, comes in 70 points. Talked about that being super cheap. Stats are okay. Has both ranged attack and melee attack. The ranged attack is actually not bad. When you get to this level close to max, his ranged attack isn't nothing. Especially for a 17-point warlord, that's not unreasonable. And he comes in with Medicae. And his ability is, when one of your Servants of the Emperor cards is destroyed, your currently deployed cards gain plus 20 wounds. Now, plus 20 is a lot, but it only applies to your cards currently on the table, and one of your other cards has to die to trigger it. So that's where the conventional wisdom in these kind of bad. That said, if you stack that with regen, shields, and Medicae, that does make a very, very durable deck, and that is definitely something to keep in mind. And one of the things I actually like about the Megas quite a bit is there have been enough cards released over time now that you can do an all Adeptus Mechanicus deck, which actually is very thematic, very focused on ranged, and has a little bit of everything. You've got regen, you've got big game hunter, barrage, ranged ready, precision shot, target acquired, outflank, and poison. You've got kind of all of the different key ranged abilities all in a single deck with just a couple points to spare here. And as you can see by the stats on the bottom here, it's very ranged heavy, but does have some melee, and is okay in terms of the initiative there. It's probably going to go second most of the time, but it's not bad. It's also got a decent mix of costs, with some upper end in the 40s. You've got a couple middling in the 10s and 20s, and then a couple at the cheaper end to go ahead and soak those, go ahead to die and get that regen bonus. This probably isn't the most successful deck. I will say the things that really benefit with Magos is Fear, Regen, Shields. Again, those are kind of the key ones. And then, of course, Endless. And Servants have some of the best Endless cards, especially if you have a ranged deck, in these two right here. So your 4 and 5 point cards, those are going to be really good. So is your Taunt to help keep your other cards alive. These guys here are more thematic, but based on the ability, you want to get the most out of the ability when you need it possible. You can also stack the deck a little bit more, and instead of putting those 40 point cards in there, you can go right up to the 70, 60, 70, 80, and do these guys up here. Like, this row is all very powerful cards that you want to keep on the table as long as possible, and the Magus does a good job of doing that. You don't get the ready benefit of Yarick, but it's a decidedly different kind of gameplay, and even that extra 20 one time can help keep one of your key hitters on the board 1 or 2 more turns longer than they would otherwise, and can turn you some games. So it's not bad. It's just you have to understand what you're getting and know that you can't necessarily rely on the ability. It's just kind of a feature that plays during the game. So usually you will probably see the tank in there because it's one of the best range cards in the game with a combination of cost and stats. You will probably see this guy in there if he's high level. Mine isn't high enough level to the point where I'd consider him. But once you get him up in this range, he gets real silly real fast. He's very expensive, but has very good stats in both melee and ranged, and comes with both regen and Medicae. So it combos perfectly with the Magus. So you got Magus Maximus. And you can do a melee deck, of course. It doesn't have to be ranged, but ranged is kind of the theme that it's going for. And of course, you can always do a soup. You can do... This guy is an excellent call in here because he has both regen and berserk. And with the Magus on the board, this guy gets an upper level around here, is incredibly hard to remove and ends up punching well above his weight class once you get some of those berserk points stacked up. So you get him to max, of course, he's a terrifying piece of work. And then, of course, some of your best fear cards are going to be this guy right here. Again, also ranged, but has a decent melee attack, has that fear and inspiring presence. That's a very nasty combo, especially if you can keep him alive longer with the Magus's ability. And then some of the squishier cards, they do benefit actually quite a bit from the Magus' ability, but they have to be on the board and risk themselves to benefit from that. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to go ahead and play it out so you can kind of see how it works with this deck. I fully expect to win these games, just full disclosure, because of where I am in the ladder right now. I'm under the 2K mark, and even with these cards with the Magus, I am overpowered at that trophy level. But we'll see. Watch, now that I've said that, let me just completely get wrecked. This guy, excellent. For 16 points, not super great health, but again, 16 points. Really good ranged attack, and then also has that Medicae and minus Medicae rank 3. Ooh, boy. And of course, he is shooting first, so I want to be careful about what I put there. And that is something about this too, is you can put cards down that you know, in positions where you know that you're going to die, to deliberately cheese that ability. If this were a more standard Magus deck and not one geared towards just being fluffy, I would probably put one of the Endless cards there, so I'd get 2 whole turns and gain 40 hit points on my cards on the board. As it is, though, you can already see how that does give me a little bit of extra durability. I am still not where I really want to be right here, so we're going to go ahead and do this. Use that Big Game Hunter, and know that that Big Game Hunter is going to die, so he's going to punch really hard, and then help keep my other 2 cards alive just a little bit longer. And put the Flyer in. Ooh, maybe just one of them. It's got. Here, luckily, I've got this. And then, let's see, I was hitting for 175 plus the ready. Whatever I put in front of him is going to die. So go with the cheapest one. I'm not going to need poison in this deck necessarily. He's going to die too, because he's probably going to shoot me. Yep, there we go. Well, he won't actually die. Yikes. But one thing here is if you have your Endless, your Taunt cards on the board, then you can have your really heavy hitter kind of in the middle of the board, shooting from the wings. So just building up health as it's not taking as much damage if you keep it in kind of a safe spot. Your barrage cards are really good in that situation. So are your Psionic Blast, if you do those, your regens, to let them just build up a chunk of health so that they will hold down a lane, even if your other cards are dying. So I'm already losing cards pretty quickly here, though. I should comfortably win this, but still it's not as comfortable as it should be considering the level mismatch where my cards are just higher leveled. I'll go ahead and do that right there. And I've got all the utility pieces in here, so it's a fun deck. And again, I just really enjoy that it's thematic. This was a pretty bad matchup that I went up against Tolmaron, because Tolmaron is, of course, the ranged deck of all ranged decks who could easily take out most opposing ranged decks. Bum. Oh, doesn't want to shoot me, huh? And now here, this is going to take an obnoxiously long time. I talked about the Magus' attack being pretty decent, especially for the cost, but that does not mean it's good. So let's see, 80, yeah, we got plenty. Excuse me. But also you can see here, this guy, the Dune Crawler, would be bleeding wounds at this point, but he's gotten topped off just enough that he's still hanging in there with a decent amount of wounds, where otherwise in most deck builds he would be dead. But you can see both the strengths and weaknesses of the deck. I've bled a lot of cards getting to this point, and did not have the decisive win that I should have, again, based on levels, which in part was probably my play, but also just kind of the Magus' ability being middling. He can succeed very well based on the strength of your servant's cards. So we played that one. Let's go ahead and see a more top tier or a more tuned up Magus. Now, usually I wouldn't edit the deck in the middle of my games here, but in this case I really do want to. I enjoy the thematic one, but any second now. There we go. Let's go ahead and take all this out. So we're going to start completely from scratch, and I'm going to start with the cards that benefit his ability and then stack it with the toughest cards I can pile on the top. Now, that is one key thing I do want to highlight again, though, is that you don't necessarily want to build around the Magus' ability, and you can just have it be a perk. Something that comes into play, but isn't something that you necessarily rely on. So we're going to go ahead with 2 cheap taunts, 2 cheap endless, to really kind of give us a nice stack at the top there, and then we're going to load this up with our heaviest ranged hitters. So my Dominator is still extremely low level. I want to get it to level 6 to where it will really be useful, but it's still throwing 81. How does that compare to this guy? 74. Not enough yet, but he's level 1. we get here? 60. Yeah, so we're going to lean on kind of the classic ones. This is one you're going to see a lot in Magos decks, and just in Servants of the Emperor decks in general, this one too being high level. Because I talked it up, we're going to go ahead and throw in Karamazov. He does not have Inspiring Presence yet, but he does have both the hit points and the damage to kind of stick it out for a while. Then we get 21 points, which should give us... No, not quite. Not quite the Vindicator. I talked up Fear. Let's see how you do, Sly. And I'm not going to pretend this is a fine-tuned top-tier deck either, but it does sort of do more what you... Ooh, and against a melee deck. Ooh. Now that's good and bad, because the thing is that Skulltaker's ability, I believe, triggers before my healing ability will. And the deck I just built is considerably slower than the one I had before. So, I may lose some cards before the healing will trigger, but we'll get to go ahead and see that, which is good for the guide, that I can go ahead and compare kind of timing windows of abilities. And what I'm expecting here is that, well, that doesn't help. Skulltaker's ability, again, being it will automatically destroy any card that is dealt. Takes a melee attack from a Chaos card and is dealt down to 25 or less of its starting wounds, which I expect will come up. And you can already see the impact of that over 100 damage hit. I've already taken out 2 cards in the wings and done some damage to this guy, and one of those was even before he was able to do his ability. So that target acquired is a huge, huge feature by itself. And you can also see my tank, the scariest card I've got, is being topped off here. However, on the downside, I'm going to go ahead and pop these guys over here. This thing is getting a little frightening. He's only got Berserk rank 1. If that was a higher rank, that would be much scarier. But we'll go ahead and move my heavy hitters over there to deal with him before he gets too out of hand. It's a pretty nasty Skulltaker deck for being that low level. We'll go ahead and throw this guy in here. And now I'm bleeding cards a lot. And that's the thing about the Magus with his ability and all that, is you are going to lose cards fairly quickly, because a lot of the cards you put in are meant to die. Because he is cheap, you can run a partial deck and have everyone be just your biggest, heaviest hitters, and that is another way to do it, where you just get the ability when your friendly cards die. You run the risk, though, of getting your board wiped. So the healing doesn't matter, because all the cards that benefit from it are then dead. And you can actually see that in effect right here. It is totally possible that something scary is about to pop out, and I would actually end up losing all 3 of these cards at once. Now that's unlikely because I do have Fear, so that's a good reason to have Fear and your anchors there. And then also I've got quite a few hit points in both of these, and the level on the other side isn't that scary. But if there was a Bloodthirster in there, it's entirely possible that could wipe my board. But it's not nothing. Another comfortable win, and you can see how definitely stacking your deck with Taunt really makes a difference in keeping your cards alive and preserving your heavier hitters. Splat. Okay, yes, so the kill does take place before your healing triggers, so if you have a card where your healing would save it from getting killed by Skulltaker, Skulltaker will kill it first. And actually thinking about it, it'd be the kill and the healing applying to the same card, so that wouldn't make sense timing-wise. One thing that does happen, though, is if it's an endless card and the first copy is killed, when the second card is deployed, it will then benefit from the healing. So your endless cards end up a little bit tougher than they otherwise are in any other faction, or under any other warlord. So that is Magus. Got to see a couple quick games with him. He's an interesting warlord, again, being cheap. He's definitely worth considering, especially if you don't have Yarick. And also, if it's early on, if you have really hard-hitting cards that have low hit points, the Magus can help you push a little bit beyond where you've been laddering with that, but you will find a ceiling where he's probably not going to be your top choice. But maybe. If you have a I have spoken to a couple ton of upper tier players who really swear by the Magus, and he's their surprise swing hitter. If that's the case, let me know. If you have an absolute favorite deck, you're up in like the upper Terra with Magus, let's talk about it. But that is it for now. Hopefully that's helpful. Until next time.